Chapter 13. Their first stop downtown was in front of Melody's apartment. She trotted along with earbuds in her ears, not paying attention to anything but music. Swaying and mouthing the music, at the same time, Max's driver was stepping out of the limo to open the door for him. She took a quick glance to see the limo, and then walked up to her building, where a doorman stood smiling and opened the door. She didn't recognize the limo, and couldn't see who was inside, so it was of no interest to her. It wasn't her father's car, so she didn't give particular attention to it or who sat inside. Melody reached her expensive small apartment, opened her expensive large door and lock, and lay her large shopping bag on her small kitchen counter when the buzzer rang. It was the doorman. She sighed and kicked off her shoes before answering him. Yes, what do you want, Hector? You have two gentlemen here by the name of Blackstone to see you. She thought a minute. Oh shit, show them in. She ran around her apartment like a mad woman, picking up her panties and bras, which lay all around the house. In the frenzy, she happened to find some day-old Chinese food. So that's where the smell came from. She rushed and threw it in the freezer, and reached for a can of room deodorizer and sprayed it around. Melody, though it was her cat who had killed something and brought it back to the apartment as a souvenir, and she felt relieved it wasn't. She didn't want to have to leave this apartment because she liked it. And it was in the middle of the art community, whom she shared the same ideas or values, even though she had no talent for anything but picking up strangers and spending money. Just when she got things tidy, the bell rang. She looked through the peephole to see two magnificent men standing at her door. She rubbed her eyes to make sure they weren't an illusion. They had to be the most beautiful men she had ever seen. She recognized one or both since they looked alike. Chiseled face, one with a beard and the other clean-shaven. She thought if she had to fuck one it would be the one with the dark soft beard. He looked more her type, although they both looked the same, except one appeared more relaxed than the other. She thought the nervous one more her speed, and she could definitely take him on or both if it called for that. She was open to anything with one of them or both. Hell yes, she would fuck both of them at the same time if she could. Melody opened the door on the third ring. She stood pleased. Her eyes bright. She was delighted at the sight of the twins. They looked even better with the door open. Two tall, broad-shouldered men. Over 6 feet, she estimated. Pure male predators, and she wanted to be their prey, one or both at the same time. At that moment she dreamed of one fondling her and kissing her nipples while the other fucked her hard in the back door. It didn't matter what they did. They were too beautiful to resist. Then she remembered the face and the name, and she said, Blackstone, as if she was rehearsing a part and forgot the word, and then it came to her. Come in, she said, her voice light and playful. Jonas and Max strode in with an easy, comfortable stride, with Max leading the way. Max sat in a large chair facing the sofa. Jonas stood watching at Melody as she closed the door behind him. She dropped her eyes. Yes, she would let this one have his way with her. She would have preferred the alpha male sitting, but he was her friend's husband, and that's where she drew the line. Never fuck a friend's husband. If the friend is dead, then that's different. She had some morals. Not many, but some. Melody slid on the sofa across from Max. Mr. Blackstone, I met you at a party. It was a black tie affair, she said. Her tone warm. Yes, I remember, Max said, as Jonas paced around the apartment with Melody watching at him. Taking in his long stride, and the way his pants fit him like a store mannequin in the high-end men's department. But of course, Max didn't remember her. There were too many people at the affair, and he only had eyes for one woman, and that was Alex. "Is there something you want, Mr. Blackstone?" Melody said, in a suggestive manner. Jonas turned, watching down at her with a smile and an open mouth. "This is my brother, Jonas." Jonas nodded and shot a warm smile with his perfect white teeth. Max seldom smiled. "I need to know about Alex. When was the last time you saw her?" "Your detective came by, and I told him everything I knew." She hunched her shoulders. "Perhaps you forgot something," Jonas said, walking over to Melody, and he sat close to her, and then placed his arm behind her on the back of the sofa. He just looked at her, his gaze penetrating. She didn't get nervous. She had been used to men since she was a teenager. She knew their likes and dislikes and what turned them on. And she had come to the conclusion that sex turned on every matured male of every age. "Maybe there are some things you forgot," Jonas said, looking into Melody's eyes. She didn't move away. She turned and gave him a needy look. Her tongue swiped across her lips. "Oh yes. She left her clothes and phone at my parents' home. I brought them with me because I thought she would come back for them." She stood. "I'll get them for you." Melody disappeared into her bedroom and came out with a lightweight tote with Alex's things. She handed it to Max and eased back near Jonas. They couldn't take their eyes off of each other. Max pulled out Alex's blouse and smelled it. When he looked up, he saw Melody staring at him. In that one glance, she saw how much Max loved Alex. "I do remember seeing her get into a limo. I think it belonged to the magician guy. I just thought he was giving her a ride home," Melody said with a shrug. "Alex is a pretty tough and savvy girl. She appears older than her years. She wouldn't get in a car with anyone she didn't trust," Melody said, looking to Jonas and then to Max. "Do you want anything to drink?" "No thank you," Max said. "I think I'll have a drink," Jonas said with a smile. Melody smiled too. There were so many meanings in the back-and-forth smiles between Melody and Jonas when Max glanced up from checking Alex's phone. "We're not going to be here that long. You don't need a drink, Jonas," Max said. "What else can you remember about that night?" he said, turning a glance to Melody with one raised eyebrow. "Do you think she knew him?" "No. I don't think so. That's why I thought it was strange for her to leave with him. But she's an adult, and I couldn't say anything." "Why haven't you called the authorities?" she questioned. Melody became alarmed for the first time. For the first time, she may have realized the gravity of what had occurred at her home. "I can't, Melody. I don't have time to explain everything to you," Max said, standing, but Jonas sat and didn't move when Max stood. He just stared into Melody's eyes, completely absorbed by her. "Jonas. Jonas," Max said, raising his voice in an authoritative manner. He had to repeat his name again for him to turn and look up and focus. His thin attention span showed more every day. "Yes. Yes. I'm ready." He took Melody's hand and pulled her up with him. Max walked to the door and opened it and stepped out into the hallway. He stood in the hall waiting for an elevator and Jonas when the door opened a few minutes later, and Jonas waltzed out smiling. Jonas caught up with Max as the elevator opened, and they both stepped in. "I got her cell number. She said she would try to get some information, and she would call me." Max glanced at him, not too encouraged as Jonas had been. He didn't think Melody knew anything. She just wanted to fuck Jonas, and it appears Jonas wanted the same. As they stepped into Max's limo, Alex and Ross were stepping out of Ross's limo. Chapter 14. Before they left for Long Island to visit the home Ross had purchased with his inheritance from Robert's estate, he gave Alex a new suggestion to make her completely forget her old life and begin her new life with him. He had induced a hypnotic suggestion where Alex could forget her past and live with him in the future. It had been a mistake to wake her from the first induced suggestion he had given her after Melody's party. But he hadn't thought through that situation. He just improvised, as he had always done in his life. He took her out of her hypnotic state because he had been too eager for her to know who he was. It had been his own arrogance that caused him to confront her after he had made love to her, after tying her up, and after enjoying her for days. And he wanted to know what she knew, and her involvement with his brother Robert. In that few minutes of meeting her and being with her, those days made him curious and jealous. He discovered it was only the time at the club which she and Robert had been intimate together, and after that, nothing occurred between the two. He discovered Alex didn't want to have anything to do with Robert, after being pressured by Jonas to become Robert's dom. But that wasn't enough for Ross. He had to know more about Max. And what he found out from Alex under hypnosis made him angry, and he blamed Max for his brother's death, and he would take from Maximilian Blackstone his most precious possession, his wife, Alexander Blackstone. When they stepped out of the helicopter, Alex glanced around and said, "Why can't I remember living here?" "Because I just bought it for you. We will be spending time here, and then I'm taking you to Italy, where we can leave everything behind and concentrate on you and me. Maybe have a child or two." He reached for her hand. Alex gave him a faded smile and walked into the home. She noticed early on her body had signs of childbirth. A few stretch marks, or it could be because she may have gained weight and lost it quickly. She wouldn't ask Ross, because she hadn't been satisfied by his previous answers. But it may have been an attempt to have children, and she couldn't. Maybe Ross was right. Maybe they should travel somewhere, and she would be calm, and then be able to conceive. Something wasn't right, and she sensed it. When she stepped into this home, it was more elaborate than anything she had seen or could remember. She smiled with pleasure and delight. She just stood looking around at the plush furnishings and enormous rooms with the high ceilings and moldings on the walls. However, this wasn't the first time she had seen such luxury. She wished she could remember. It would make her life easier. "What's wrong with us staying here? Not that I don't want to go to Europe, but I can be happy here with you," Alex said as Ross held her around her waist, delighted that she was pleased. Nevertheless, he couldn't take the chance that something would trigger her memory. She had only functional amnesia brought on by his suggestions where she lost personal identity, and she's unaware of her past as long as he doesn't give her a suggestion like he did in the apartment. That was a stupid thing to do, and he knew it. But it was easy for her to stay in this state, because she's considered a high hypnotizable person. The only problem is, if she remembered something as small as a telephone number, that could trigger her past memories. That's why it became necessary for Ross to take her abroad as soon as possible. "Remind me, where did I meet you?" Alex said with a smile, hoping he would tell her. "Don't worry your pretty head," Ross said, giving her a kiss on her forehead. "But you are so rich. I can't fathom having met a man like you anywhere. All I remember is that I may have gone to college. It's just difficult when you find that you have more money than you can imagine, and a handsome man too. I don't think I'm that lucky," she said with a chuckle. "Luck had nothing to do with it," Ross said. "We were meant to be together. Nature put us together." But you could have anyone, why would you choose me? Can't you see how beautiful you are? There are many beautiful women. You came into my office. I was an attorney, but I gave that up, Ross said. The actor in him had taken over, and now he thought he was Robert. Robert was the lawyer, and Ross was the actor in the family. You came in looking for a job, and I said that's the girl for me. It was as if Ross had gotten a new script, and he wanted to improvise again. Alex appeared satisfied by his words, and unaware of her previous memory loss. I'm thinking that I should see someone about my memory. Not today. Tomorrow, I'll tell you everything you need to know. Come, I want to show you our place. He took her hand, leading her through the house. She only knew what Ross had programmed, and Ross hoped she would stop questioning him about her past. He had to make sure she didn't see a doctor. At least not until he had her out of the country. He would have to make sure her pathological amnesia would stick this time. The hypnotic suggestions had to be stronger, where she would accept everything and forget even the smallest things in her past. He blamed himself. At Robert's apartment, she had been with him a week without problems, and after she lay tied up, and before he walked into the bathroom, he made the mistake of saying to her as she lay on the bed sleeping, "Remember everything." And that's when she woke with her hands and feet bound to the bed, and she knew who she was and who she was married to. That was the worst thing he could have done, by telling her to remember everything, he thought. When he looked up, the maid stood before them. Dinner will be ready in a half hour. Ross looked to Alex as if he was an actor in an old black and white movie and said, "Darling, don't you want to freshen up before dinner?" His voice polite. "Yes," she said in a small voice. She took her cue from him, as she had done before. "Where is the master bedroom?" He took her hand. "I'll show you." They walked on the marble floors until they came to the end of the corridor and turned left. And to the right, Ross opened the bedroom. "Do you like it?" "I'd like something more modern." "Then we'll change it. Tomorrow, I have to go into town early. You can have the driver take you to Manhattan. I'll give you the name of a decorator, and when you're finished, then the driver can bring you back here. I should be home when you get back." Ross liked the sound of home, and he liked saying it to Alex. They had dinner together, and they slept together. The next morning when she woke, Ross had dressed and gone. She showered and dressed in what she found in her closet. A pair of black designer pants, a white blouse, and a large black scarf to cover her from the fall chill. She had her breakfast and called for a car. When the car pulled up to the front of the mansion, the driver opened the door, and she stepped in and said, "How long will it take to get to Manhattan?" "We should make it there in over an hour. Faster if the traffic isn't bad." The driver was correct. It did take an hour to get to the heart of Manhattan's East Side. They stopped in the front of a design storefront. It looked more like an antique shop filled with furniture and heavy curtains. When she looked further, the shop contained modern furniture which caught her eye. "I should be a while. You can go back to Long Island. I'll take the train home." The driver didn't know whether to leave her, because Ross hadn't given him any instructions, so he took his instruction from Alex and drove off. When Alex stood in front of the shop gazing at the window, she recognized a mansion at the corner and across the street. She turned, and instead of walking into the furniture store, she stepped across at the red light and headed to the end of the block, turned and walked up to the door. Wondering why she did that, she stopped before she rang the bell. She glanced curiously at the door, and then at the bell and pushed the bell. A man opened the door and said, "Come in. We're expecting you." She thought about turning around, but decided not to. She did wonder why he would expect her, when she didn't know that she would be in Manhattan and in that particular area. "Keep walking until you get to the wooden door. Then ring the bell." Alex didn't know what drove her to take the man's direction, but it was something familiar about the place. Maybe it was the smell. It was a smell of sex, liquor, and leather. She rang the bell. She had been at that door before, but now it appeared different. For some reason, she expected to see a much younger man open the door. Instead, it was a man in his 50s with dark dry hair and slightly bald at the center. "Come in, Ms. Ah." Alex had to think of something. She couldn't give the name Ross calls her. But then she didn't know her name. "Well, never mind for now." She stepped in and he closed the door. "You can call me Mr. Rossini. Just get your stage name ready, because you look just the type I'm looking for. I don't even know your expertise, but you're hired." Alex looked bewildered. "I need a dom for one of my high-paying customers. He's not one yet, but he will be once he hears about you. I assume you're here because you're a dominant. All my customers are submissive. Imagine that. These rich fuckers are here to get their ass beat and led around by a woman so they can grovel at her feet. When can you start? If you don't have a costume, you can get one in the back. But I need you now." "Well, not now, in about an hour." Rossini never stopped to hear anyone talk but himself. He rattled on and heard what he wanted to hear. "I can work today, but I have to leave before dark," Alex said, still confused by what led her to this place and why she would accept his offer. Rossini took her hand and directed her to the open door. "Go to that room to your right and tell the woman to let you pick out an outfit. You look like the black leather type. Whips and canes." He laughed and shrugged his shoulder. Then he nodded his head, smiling, and Alex smiled with him, as if she was caught up in something that she didn't know her way out of, or how to say no. She came to the house hoping to discover something that would jar her memory, and now she's in a bondage club, and she feels as if she belongs here. Is that where Ross met her and took her from this? Was she betraying him by going back? She thought. When she woke from this bizarre moment, she was standing in the middle of a room filled with black leather outfits, and a middle-aged woman asking her, "What can I do for you, hun?" "Mr. Rossini sent me." "I'm Mrs. Rossini." Then she walked over and pulled a pair of leather pants from the closet. "Do you have something more feminine? A dress or a—" "I have just the thing for you." It was a sheer gown. "Is that all there is to it?" Alex said, inspecting it. "Let me see the leather again." "I don't think I can wear the see-through gown," Alex said. The woman turned and pulled out the same leather all-in-one outfit and slapped it down across the back of a chair. She turned and looked at Alex, who appeared to be a little shy, and said, "You're here to administer pain and whatever else they want. Not to share stories and exchange pictures of your children." That had triggered a memory, but she couldn't hold on to it for long. "Okay. I'll take it. Now you will need some toys. The room is filled with all sorts of toys. Some you will use on him, and some he will use on you. It's no telling. Sometimes they say they want a dom, and what they really want is both. Dom and submissive, and you look like you have played both roles." Her stare made Alex uneasy. She knew something about her that she didn't know. "Have you seen me before?" Alex asked. "Nope. My husband just bought this club not too long ago. I don't have time to talk." Go to room 2, where you need to shower and dress. Here's the key. Alex took the key. When she opened the door, the woman said, "Don't forget your mask, and there are wigs. Pick one. We don't want our guest recognizing you anywhere. You know you are bound by secrecy. Did you sign your contract?" "No." "Here's one." She slapped it down in front of her. "I have to talk to my husband about that. For some reason, he's forgetting to do his job. Maybe because he has this guy looking over his shoulder. When your first guest comes to visit, he can keep you there an hour or maybe longer. But make sure he's satisfied because he's important. He has loads of money, and your tip will be large if you give him what he needs." Alex shot her a small, quivering smile. And she shook her head, saying she understood. She didn't understand what was happening to her. But she had to find out about her life. Not that she didn't trust Ross to tell her because she liked him, but she didn't love him. It felt as if she was in love with someone else, and she didn't know how or why.